We talked last week about the information's 50 most promising startups for 2025. As a reminder, this list has a pretty great track record about forecasting which startups have gone on to do quite well. Already, just a week later, one startup from this year's list has announced a big new funding round. Foxglove, a robotics software company, raised $40 million, led by Bessemer Venture Partners at $150 million valuation. Joining me now to discuss the news is Rocket Drew, our AI and robotics reporter, and Foxglove CEO, Adrian MacNeil. Welcome to the both of you. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Akash. Glad to be here.
Hey, thanks, Akash.
So, Rocket, I'm going to come to you to talk about robotics, but Adrian, I want to start with you. The name Foxglove, how did you come up with that? Because this is a running theme with robotics companies. Last time we were on the show with a company called Pickle Robot, I think, if I'm right, Rocket.
Right.
And we asked him why it was called Pickle, and I honestly, I don't remember the answer. What is the story behind Foxglove?
Yeah. Pickle was a good one. I mean, Pickle was that's a funny story because that's kind of a play on words. They're picking parts and things like this. I was actually at their office quite recently, and there's just green everywhere. Like all of the conference rooms are named after like types of pickles. It's really.
I think you just explained it better than he did, Rocket. What do you think?
He also likes green, you know.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So what's the deal with Foxglove? Do you also have names of conference rooms with different variations?
Yeah. So Foxglove is it's actually a flower. It's a wildflower. Here's my thing with names, right? I think that names become whatever you give them, basically. And so I don't actually like having a name that's directly like too literal what you're doing as a company, because what you're doing changes. Especially, we started this company 4 years ago. It's going to be a long ride. Companies launch multiple products, so I actually don't like having a name that is too literal about what it is that you're building. Foxglove, it sounds cool. It's actually a wildflower that grows in New Zealand where I grew up, and sounds awesome. It rolls off the tongue. More importantly, the domain was available. The Twitter, the name was available. Wasn't already taken, and you can say it. You can see it written down. You know how to pronounce it.
There you go.
You can hear it said. You know how to write it down. So that's my criteria.
I can't argue with it. It's a great name. I like it. Tell us about the more literal aspect of this. What does the company actually do, and what did you raise all this money for?
Yeah, so we build data infrastructure for robots and physical AI. We help companies with logging and collecting data at the edge on their robots, uploading, getting data off robots, which is actually a big challenge in the robotics space because all of your robots are deployed out in factories or farms where you have terrible internet. You're logging all this incredibly dense data, sensors, video data, 3D data. You're logging all of that at the edge. You need to upload it. You need to bring it back to the cloud. And then the developers, the ML engineers, the software engineers need to be able to understand, to analyze, to debug that information. So they use Foxglove to store and organize all of that data, search through it, find interesting, relevant events, and then really go, 3 levels deep into the debugging and understand frame by frame what was actually happening in this scene. So if that's an autonomous vehicle, it's like, why did we slam on the brakes here? If that's a, picking robot in a warehouse or a logistics, thing, then we're understanding like, why did we drop this item? If we're a forklift, why did we back into this pallet? This is
so it's the software component to robotics.
Right, exactly.
Got it. Rocket, why did Foxglove stand out to you among all the software companies that you probably studied in robotics?
Well, truly, it was a story of happy customers, actually. As I was making my rounds and talking to people in the robotics space, multiple times I ran into people who were just very relieved to have access to Foxglove software. Because in robotics, we talk a lot about data. It can sound like kind of a dry topic, but in robotics, data is gold. That's how you improve your robots. That's how you get the AI to actually power the robots to do all of these impressive things we see. But robots turn out so much data, it can be difficult to manage. So I kept coming into companies who were just like, it was a breath of relief for them to have software that could help manage the data for them. And I would ask people questions and people would say, oh, that's a good question. You should ask this guy, Adrian, about that. So that's how I ended up learning about them.
So the customers are talking about you, Adrian. Who are your customers?
Yeah, we have like a very wide range of customers. So everything from small startups up to industry leaders, like big companies like NVIDIA using us, right down to earlier stage ones, Chef Robotics and Pickle Robots, which are both on, I think we're on the Information 50 list, are both customers. We have warehouse ones like Dexterity. We have a lot of self-driving customers like Wave and Wabi, a lot of the newer generation of self-driving companies. So a big range. Also aerospace and defense ones, so Anduril, Shield AI, Saronic. The full spectrum, really.
And tell me, you raised $40 million. What was the valuation you raised at?
Yeah, so 190 was the valuation.
190. Rocket, I want to come to you on this because we had Vinod Khosla on the show, and we were talking about valuations at large, and he talked about the bonkers valuations in robotics right now. $190 million. I mean, I don't have any way of putting that into context. It's certainly not the AI valuations that we're seeing, but it's still a big number. Talk to me a little bit, Rocket, about what you're seeing in terms of valuations in robotics broadly.
Yeah, truly, some of the valuations are astronomical. I think that it reflects investors' enthusiasm for physical AI right now, and reflects sort of the potential of physical AI to be the next frontier of AI moving into the physical world and doing real world tasks for us in the homes and factories and warehouses and so on. I think when we were putting together this list, some companies were kind of priced out of our TI 50 criteria because they had
Right.
already raised too much or they were valued too highly, especially companies that were building humanoid robots or developing foundation models, like developing one AI model to rule them all that will power a variety of robots. I think what's interesting about Foxglove in particular is because it's structured as kind of more of a traditional SaaS infrastructure business, it's
Mhm.
able to play to that whole market, sort of like across the board, like Adrian was describing. But the structure of the business can be a little bit more like familiar to investors. They understand how the margins are supposed to work in a business like that, how to price that kind of software, and that can make it a little bit more, I think, familiar while still giving access to the whole field.
Adrian, when you were out fundraising, and I say this knowing that you are a software company, and a lot of venture firms probably know how to handle software businesses better than robotics. But as you were out doing your fundraising, I wonder if you can talk a little bit about what proportion of venture capital funds actually have the expertise to invest in robotics, broadly speaking. Because I've written this column before at The Information that when it comes to hardware and chips, actually, for example, not every venture firm is set up with the expertise to invest in something as technical as chips. When it comes to robotics, is it the same story, or is this a growing proportion? How do you think about that?
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of investors, a lot of traditional VCs that mostly invest in software are, I would say, robotics curious right now. I had a lot of conversations where people said, we've been looking into robotics. You know, we heard Jensen get on stage and say physical AI is going to be the next big AI. We're looking into it. We're talking to everyone, but you know, we don't invest in hardware or something like this. I'm excited about robots. We don't invest in hardware. You're gonna have to square that circle somehow. We were very lucky. We started the business in 2021, and you know, at the time, most of the investors were say, "Hey, we're going to go build developer infrastructure for robotics industry," and they're like, "What robotics industry? What are you talking about? Like, why aren't you starting an NFT business?" And so we got down this train very early on. We were lucky to partner with Eclipse, who have been investing in hardware and robotics and these types of businesses for almost a decade now. So partnering with them was great because they had strong conviction in the industry. This most recent round, there's definitely a lot more interest out there in robotics and physical AI. And like I say, we're lucky in some senses that we're building a traditional developer infrastructure business. So people are kind of familiar with SaaS margins and pricing and things like that. But yeah, I would say that there is still a lot of. We are probably the largest and company in this growing sort of developer infrastructure for physical AI vertical.
Oh gosh.
And
Yeah.
it's definitely new to a lot of investors. So it's something that we had to sort of educate people. There's still a lot of I would say people unsure about like sure, we believe robotics is going to be big, but like how big? Yeah, I
Right.
mean,
Rocket, what do you see here?
Well, I've got to tell you a quick anecdote about this. I mean, Bessemer has invested in hardware before. They're not totally, new to this space,
Right.
but when they were doing their due diligence on Foxglove and considering an investment, they got together in the New York office, and one of their investors put a Raspberry Pi on a toy car and then drove it around the office and collected data off the self-driving car using Foxglove software, and then visualized what the car could see using Foxglove software. And that was part of how they tested the product, was just to drive this remote car around the office. I thought that was excellent.
Wow.
Yeah, that was actually awesome to see. I mean, as a founder, you get a lot of a lot of outreach from VCs, and it can be difficult to tell like who's serious and who's just kicking the tires. But yeah, Bessemer showed up with, they actually sent me a selfie of them with this like little toy car that they'd set up in the office, and Foxglove running in the background.
I'm going to venture out to say that that was a more compelling pitch than the VC that said you should be starting an NFT business in 2025. Well, I want to thank you both for
21.
Yeah. I want to thank you both for coming on. Adrian, congrats on the funding round, and Rocket, I look forward to seeing all of the companies from your list that continue to complete these funding rounds. Thank you to you both. It's great to see you.